Hey folks, welcome to the REIN channel, where I'm joined today by Rashed, where we are talking about what's going on in the Calgary market with an overview of what's happening in Alberta and what you need to know as an investor when it comes to property management. What is going on in the world of rents, where the market is, some insights into what you need to know if you're being a landlord in that area. There's some really cool things. So Arshad, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
So, Arshad, you are a great representative of the RPM team, the Real Property Management team. You're a boots on the ground guy. You've also got a realtor background, of course. But let's talk about what's happening in Calgary overall. What do you see happening in the market? So we know that there's a lot of people flooding into the province of Alberta. Lots of them are landing in Calgary and area. We know that rents are starting to creep up, and if you're reading the headlines, it's dramatic. But I mean, your boots on the ground. What is it? Kind of give us an overarching, top down or high level view of what's happening in the Calgary rental market right now.
Well, it's exactly what we're hearing. It's pretty busy. We've got an influx of immigration coming in from out of country and other provinces within the country. So inventory has been low for a long time, and there hasn't been a lot of purpose-built rentals. So that adds pressure. When you've got more people coming in, it adds even more pressure. So that's where the investors come in and kind of help alleviate some of those pain points. But we just don't have enough inventory and not enough products. So vacancies are quite low, which is affecting the rental rates.
Well, let's get into a little bit of minutia here, because I have my view of certain property types, if you will, specifically in Alberta. One of the things that we know that investors get caught in this right now, high demand, low supply. At some point, this will get cleaned up one way or the other. These are cycles that we go through. We don't know how long this cycle will last, but ultimately the cycle will change for some reason. We just have to know that. And whether that's in 2 years, 5 years, I don't care. That's the cycle will shift. Now, having said that, when we look at property types, are you seeing a propensity for investors to maybe be a little bit too optimistic in terms of what they're buying and what they're renting? Let me give you a background. This is a little bit long-winded, I know, but I think it'll give us good context. One of my kind of benchmarks is I say to investors all of the time, when the market's hot, everybody's a genius. But you have to look at when the market starts to quiet down. You have to ask yourself this question. Will the property that I own, that I bought, that I invested in, if there's 7 more like it or 5 more like it in the building, in the neighborhood, in the area, will my property be the chosen property, or will in fact I get beat out by other properties because of my location, because of the style of property I have? So what I'm saying is that we have to back test the buy and ask ourselves, what is this going to look like in an average market, or even in a slower market? Is my property a key property type that will appeal to renters even in the long term? Do you have a kind of a thought process around that you see yourself? And the reason I ask that is people will just buy anything. Investors in these kind of markets just go, okay, well, no, I'm going to buy this condo in the worst part of town because it's cheap and I can rent it out for a lot of money. Give me your thoughts. I know that was long-winded, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to answer all of that because there's quite a bit that goes into it, and I think location is key. Number one would be location and lifestyle, because you're right. You can get attracted to a very well priced property, but it might be in the worst part of town. And right now, it would be easy to cash flow, easy to find tenants. But once the tides change, then you're going to be competing and you're going to have to drop your rental rates. So for me, I think investors should look mostly at the location and the lifestyle that a tenant would be attracted to. Those over time tend to do much better.
So, when you think about a couple of things, you've got immigration coming into the province, into Alberta, into Calgary, specifically where we're talking about today. I mean, a lot of this would apply to Edmonton, Lethbridge, many areas. But here's a question for you. You look at, let's say, Vancouver and or Toronto. These are areas that historically, small units, condos, they rent out. Now, that's not the nature generally of what's happening in Calgary, for example. Alberta has a tendency to want big, wide open spaces and bigger units. That's been my experience over the years. And, please correct me if that's starting to change. But that's part of the question. When you have immigration coming into the country, are they attached to more space? Because many of them are leaving countries where smaller spaces are what they're used to. Are you seeing any trends in that regard?
We are. So I think, everything being bigger in Alberta is still the case, but we
Mm-hmm.
are seeing a trend where that is starting to shift. Apartments are becoming more mainstream. It depends where the tenant is coming from. If they're coming from a European country, they're used to apartments. They're used to that lifestyle. So we are seeing a trend where it's shifting, where smaller spaces are being are more in demand. But traditionally, and still, I think the bigger and better is better in the Alberta view.
When you look at it, I know that right now one of the popular property types is, let's say, a detached. Froze up. There we go. I'm back. Is a detached up down where the lower suite might be, let's say, 700 square feet. Are those still solid investment property types? Is there a demand for that 700 square foot basement suite? As good as that basement suite might be, in a newer complex.
It is. We've recently seen the biggest spike in rental rates is in those smaller basement suites. In some cases, in certain areas, they've almost doubled what they traditionally go for. But there's two I guess demand streams. There's the investor that wants to have that up down income coming in, and then there's the home buyer that wants to purchase, live upstairs, and rent out the basement, or vice versa. I'm starting to see young couples buy a property, live in the basement, rent up the upper floor just to get that cash flow.
Sure.
So there's definitely demand, and the city of Calgary actually has an amnesty period where they've made it much easier to legalize a basement suite, and you only have to meet fire code as opposed to building code.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a lot of these conversions and more demand. When those come up, they usually sell pretty quick because they've got those two potential pools of the first time home buyer wanting to rent out the basement or the investor wanting that double income.
So when you've got, like, right now, what we're seeing is a lot of money coming into Alberta and into Calgary, even Edmonton, other areas from out of province, primarily out of Ontario, but as well as British Columbia. Some investors are really taking money off the table that they've made in the Ontario market, putting it to work in Alberta. I mean, let's face it. When you look at what you can buy for a unit in Calgary from a price point of view, compared to what you're picking up in Toronto / the GTA or Vancouver Lower Mainland, it's like, yeah, I'll take three of those. But are you seeing some oversights, or maybe I'm going to call them mistakes, but are you seeing some things that you're kind of looking at going, oh my gosh, you don't really understand how Alberta thinks and what that rental market is? And if you were going to give some guidance or a warning, for example, to out of province investors, what would you say?
I would definitely seeing a little bit of oversight. Number one, make sure you're lining yourself up with a good agent that understands investment properties. That's main. And then the biggest thing is to have a property management company that understands the market, that understands how to deal with the type of tenants we're dealing with now, especially if they're refugees or immigrants from other countries. There's very few tools out there and resources available to do background checks, have proper information of okay, what kind of track record or history these people have.
Mm-hmm.
At RPM, we do have a tool available that's getting better every day that gives us a little more insight to a European tenant or a South American tenant, and it gives us a little bit of history of their banking, a good background check. So that's very important. The other item is location. If it's not always about price, location is key because in the long run that'll do better and you'll stay occupied a lot longer. But a couple of oversights I'm seeing, especially in the condo market, if the condo fees, some condo fees are pretty high, and they're not. Not everyone is taking into account what that'll do to their cash flow. These condo fees will always continue to increase due to inflation and labor costs and managing these properties. So that is one oversight I'm seeing, where they're not taking into account what the condo fee is today and what it could be. And then a good condo document review will kind of give you a telltale sign of how these have been increasing and if it's being managed properly. So that's something that's being overlooked. And then a lot of times it is location. Some locations will end up doing much better.
Now, you've got a lot of Ukrainian refugees coming into the city. One of the things about them, and you make a really great point, by the way, which is if you're not equipped, if you're not working with a property manager that has the tool, as you put it, or the tools to do background checks on out of country potential clients, you're really kind of having to filter a gut feel, which is a little bit dangerous. This is why Real Property Management's been one of REIN's trusted partners for a long time now. And we're big believers in just how good RPM is. But, you just added something there that you are one, not everybody has the tools to be able to do that. And it's really, really important. I can't stress enough. But let's face it, when we look at the refugees coming over, some people might, it depends on how you view. These refugees are often well educated. They've had great jobs that they were, they're great careers, if you will, great jobs that they had in Ukraine, and now they're, of course, being displaced and having to come into this country. But one of the things that I know is that culturally, what we see all of the time is cultures want to hang out with other cultures. They want to be in that neighborhood where they speak the same language, they go to that same church, they, can enjoy the same food, speak the same language, of course. Are you seeing that start to shape up? For example, if I said to you, I want to appeal to the Ukrainian refugees because I think many of them are going to be here for many years to come. What area of Calgary? Is there an answer to that question yet, Arshad?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you'll find them in pockets everywhere, but the majority you'll find is South Calgary, Southwest, Southeast. That's where the pockets are. And you're right. They want to be around people that they understand, and culturally they get each other. So that there are definitely pockets and areas where a good agent or property management company can point out that if this is what you're looking for, this is where the demand is.
So when you look at what's happening right now, I'm just so I say to investors all the time, I know those condos seem very appealing from a price point of view. I personally, I'm not even going to look at a condo. That's just where I'm at. This many years, born and raised in Alberta, I know that market, and having owned condos in that market, investment condos, my guidance to anybody would be really big caution. And I know they're going to probably make a bunch of realtors happy, but that's just my view of it. I never say never.
I share your rhetoric. I definitely share that my view, because one interesting that's happened is condos in the Calgary market have been on a 10 or 15-year price decline. You can't earn cash flow at all. And they've just recently started to cash flow and recently started to appreciate in value just because of the low inventory in the current market situation.
Yeah.
But historically, I'm in the same mind view as you.
Yeah. And I'll guarantee you one thing. Here's the one guarantee. Condo fees, strata fees, they only do one thing, and that is go up. I've never had in 20 years of working with thousands of investors, nobody's ever said, hey, my condo fees went down. Not going to happen. And I think that I don't know anybody that hasn't had a special assessment in a condo in a building that they own, but I'm sure there are. That's just me being really negative about that, but it's a really big word of caution to out-of-province investors who just don't understand that Alberta market. You cannot compare it to Toronto, GTA, Vancouver, Lower Mainland. If you do, you're going to get caught. Having said all of that, what the heck are investors investing in that you're seeing good demand where we can actually perhaps get some cash flow based on what's happening? Is there a property type that you're seeing that works pretty well?
Absolutely. Apartment buildings, multifamily, they're doing very well. Single detached is actually doing extremely well,
Yeah.
especially if it's a legalized basement suite.
Yeah.
The cash flows there. They're probably better than any other investment at the moment.
Yeah.
when it comes to the types of properties.
Just to give some out of province investors some scope of what, if I'm looking at a single family detached, let's say southeast, southwest, or actually let's go northeast, northwest, kind of in those newer areas, where we're getting some purpose built single family detached up down. So they're actually duplexes. Um, do they still work? And what kind of price point are you looking at?
Well, it depends between the Northeast and Northwest where you are. They can be anywhere from 550 to about 750,000 in price point,
Yeah.
which is still fairly affordable. And the cash flow, they still work.
Yeah.
As long as the investor is not over leveraged, the cash flow still work.
Yeah.
But that's the price points, give or take.
Is that generally you're looking at 25% down these days?
20% at the minimum for an investor, but
Yeah.
25 would be the sweet point.
Yeah. And Southwest, a more desirable area generally. What's your a little more expensive in that part of town?
It is a little bit more expensive. Mind you, the rental rates are a little higher as well.
Yeah.
What we've noticed in Calgary, the rental rates have kept up with the price increases in the property values. So they're still cash flowing and still makes good sense to invest in.
What's your thoughts around, I guess, what we'll call inner city, which is to say, as we get into not downtown, but kind of that central Calgary area? But I'd like to know, what are you seeing even in the downtown core? But let's kind of break those down into two parts.
Downtown core is still fairly busy for rentals. There's a chance, depending on the type of unit you have, it might go vacant. If you got a penthouse, it'll take a little longer potentially. We're seeing a lot of conversions from office to rentals coming up. They're converting them to residential.
Yeah.
But inner city, in and around downtown core, it's interesting because it's very cyclical. As oil and gas goes up and down, the vacancy rates go up and down along with it in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing right now there's an influx of builds happening just because of the way the market is. But as soon as the market pulls back a little bit, we see a pullback in those areas as well.
So, what are you looking at for vacancy rate right now, Arshad, in that general in Calgary?
Oh, it's quite low. I would say below the 1%,
Wow.
depending on what you're looking at. It's super low. Nothing's lasting. We're actually seeing multiple offers from tenants competing on rentals.
Now, I mean, you're close to it. Do you see, do you see the supply issue starting to kind of let up in the future for some reason? Maybe because there's new builds coming on the market. Do you see an end in sight in terms of demand? We've within the real estate investment network. I mean, we've been talking about Calgary for 4 years, and seeing this coming and knowing this would come to fruition in this regard. I mean, we've been just telling investors in the community, Calgary, 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 surrounding area. I mean, we've just been hammering that drum. Do you see a time in your sightline and a reason perhaps that you're going to see this, I guess, pull back? Any reason that you're seeing show up?
I don't see that in the near future. No one has a crystal ball, but for the longest time, for decades, we were short on purpose built rentals, and now they're playing catch up.
Yeah.
And even if all the purpose built rentals that are either under construction or being planned, I still think we have enough demand to occupy those, and I don't see it in the near future. Who knows what 2, 3 years or 4 years from now we'll have in store? But as long as people continue to move here, which is I don't see that ending anytime soon either. Demand will be high.
Beautiful. Arshad, I want to say thank you again for your time and these insights that you've given us. Some good, valuable information that we've just kind of covered. And folks, what I'll do is I'll put links and things in the description so that you can connect with Real Property Management. And or if you're looking to invest from outside the province and you need property management, you can reach out to Arshad and get connected to see what you can link together, because you need property management if you're out of province. So Arshad, once again, thanks for your time, man.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.